Hello, everyone. I am Christina with Burnley and Trowbridge, and you're joining us today for part one of our wrapping gown sew along. In today's video, we'll discuss a little bit about the historical context of wrapping gowns, including all of the various things that they might be called. We will print and assemble our pattern and cut out our fabric. Now, we will be using the official B&T wrapping gown pattern for this sew along, which covers a couple of different ways to assemble this garment in the instructions. But we wanted to use one of the more interesting and perhaps tricky assembly methods for this video. And even better, the methods that we use in this video are suitable for use on any 18th century wrapping gown that you're going to be making. And to help make things a little bit more manageable for the camera, I'm going to be working in half scale for this sew along, but don't worry, this won't alter any of the construction techniques and will work just fine on your full-size gowns at home. Before we get started, let's take a minute and discuss a question that comes up quite a bit, and that is, what exactly is a wrapping gown? Just like today, terminology in the 18th century was somewhat fluid and influenced by a number of factors, including the date, geography, predominant culture, language. This means that the same garment might be known by multiple different names, and garments that are similar or slightly different from one another might be called the same name. Not confusing at all, right? So then, what exactly is a wrapping gown? Most scholars would agree that in the 18th century, a wrapping gown is a loosely fitted, T-shaped style of gown worn for undress or casual situations. Gowns of this type appear to be worn by both feminine and masculine presenting individuals in the 18th century, although there might be some slight stylistic differences between the two. This type of loose T-shaped garment was known by quite a few names in the 18th century. You might see references to Indian gowns or India gowns, wrappers, wrapping gowns, nightgowns, potentially even more than that. With all of these names, you might be wondering, what should you call your own wrapping gown to be the most period correct? Well, the safest thing is just to call it a gown. But for the sake of having a shared vocabulary, and so we can all be on the same page, we're calling our plain T-shaped garment a wrapping gown. I do want to pause here and take a moment to address another style of undress gown that you might be familiar with or that you've heard of, and this is the banyan. Sometimes the term banyan gets used when people might actually be referring to the garment we're making today. And while banyan gowns are definitely an 18th century gown for undress, the most current research suggests that the term banyan is more likely ascribed to a style of gown that is closely fitted to the body, often with front closures of some type, and with a separate set-in sleeve instead of the cut-in-one sleeve of the wrapping gown. While both banyans and wrapping gowns might be worn by masculine presenting individuals in the home, while at leisure, we see tradespeople wearing them while in their shops also. So apothecaries, tailors, printers, planters, etc. are all depicted wearing gowns for undress while at their trade. The more feminine variation of wrapping gowns seems to be more commonly associated with wear within the household, perhaps in the boudoir while dressing or relaxing within the home. They were also very, very popular to wear for portraits. We don't see a lot of feminine presenting individuals wearing what we call a banyan, but we do see a different style of fitted T-shaped garment that are worn for portraits that might be called sultanas or sultanas. And those are a more fitted T-shaped garment, probably inspired by Turkish dress. For today, though, we're going to be focusing on the wrapping gown in particular, and the where, when, and why you are planning on wearing your gown might inform your choice of textile. So it is important to consider your own context before purchasing your supplies. If you'd like to see some 18th century examples of wrapping gowns, or what we are calling wrapping gowns, we've got lots of them on the B&T Pinterest board, which we'll link below, so pop over there and check those out. Okay, so now that we have a shared idea of what this garment is and what we'll be calling it, let's get started making one. If you are using 55 to 60 inch wide fabric, you're going to need 3.5 yards of your fabric of choice. And depending on how much you want to piece, if you are using narrower goods, you'll need anywhere from 5 to 6 2/3 yards for your project. If you want a center back seam and you're using 45-inch wide fabric, you'll want the 6 2/4 yards. If you are okay doing piecing on the sides and the sleeves, you can get by with narrower fabric at 5 yards. If you are lining your wrapping gown, you are going to want the same amount of fabric again for your lining fabric as you had for your exterior. And wrapping gowns are made from just about anything you can think of. Linen or cotton are great for Virginia summers, so are worsteds. There are wrapping gowns that are made out of silk damasks and taffetas, and if you're lining them, sometimes they even get mixed and matched. You might see a worsted outer with a silk lining or a silk damask outer with a cheaper, thinner silk on the inside. You can read more about textile choices in the instruction booklet, but generally speaking, we see a lot of different types of fabrics used in wrapping gowns in the 18th century. You'll also want some thread for stitching, and I'm going to be sewing on my worsted gown with linen thread for the interior, and I'll be using a quilter's twist for my exterior top stitching. You don't need much for that. It's a very small amount of visible stitching on the outside. We're going to want wax for our linen thread, scissors, and of course, your pattern. Now, before you cut your pattern out, you'll need to determine which size gown you would like to make, and there is a size chart in the pattern for this. But keep in mind that this is a fairly generous garment, and in the 18th century, this garment was actually available ready-made. So if you don't have a perfect fit, you don't have to worry. Just choose the size for your measurements. And if you're between sizes, you can size up for a fuller gown or size down for a less full gown. You'll also need to pick your sleeve shape, and there are 3 to choose from with this pattern. But since the straight sleeve is the most versatile and common, we're going to use that one for this project. There are a couple of customizations that you can make with this pattern, and one of them is the length of your gown. So if you'd like to customize the length of your gown, you'll want to do that now. Measure from the nape of your neck to your desired hem length. And you can do that with a tape measure. You can also just do it with a cord. Once you have your length, we're going to check that against your pattern. So we're going to lay our tape along the straight edge of the pattern from the top corner down. And we're going to choose either the closest line to your measure, or we can make a hem adjustment by drawing a new line at your measurement. The size 2 hem length comes in at around 58 inches from shoulder to hem, if that helps. You can also customize your sleeve length, and if you'd like to do that, we can measure from the nape of the neck to wherever you would like your sleeve length to end on your gown. I think wrist is good. Once you've got your measure, whether it's physical or numerical, we're going to lay that along the top edge of the wrapping gown, starting at the top corner, and then we will mark the length of the sleeve at the end of the sleeve. And then we can shorten or lengthen accordingly. Once any adjustments have been made, we can continue on. And before we cut out our fabric, we do need to prepare the fabric in a special way by folding it. And this process is very similar to a bed gown in the way that the fabric will be prepared for cutting, and that it gets folded so that there is no shoulder seam in the final garment. So let's grab our fabric. So to fold our fabric, we are going to want to fold it hamburger style along the cross grain so that the raw edges match at the bottom. Once you've done that, we're going to now fold our fabric hot dog style along the grain so that our 4 salvages are now stacked on top of one another along the side edge. And if your fabric's crooked, now's a pretty good time to try to block it or true it up. Now that our fabric is folded, let's lay our pattern on top, making sure that the top right corner of our pattern is at the junction of our 2 folds, and this should put our raw edges at the hem of our gown. Now at this point, if your pattern fits nicely on the fabric, then chalk your outline and you are ready to cut. And we are going to need to cut our neck pieces from our outer fabric and lining scraps. So let's do that. And we have our neck piece here. So we just need one from the lining and one from the outer. And if we can keep them on the grain or the cross grain, that is ideal. We don't really want these on the bias. And so I'm going to cut mine right from this little scrap area just because it's a really convenient placement for good use of fabric. And do keep in mind our neck piece has a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Depending on how wide your fabric is, what size you chose, or how long you made your sleeves, your pattern might not fit on your fabric. This is okay. These garments are often pieced in the 18th century, and you may find that you need to piece yours. If that's the case, we have actually made a separate video for you on piecing using the wrapping gown as our example. We've linked it below, so check it out if you need to piece, and then come back here to finish your wrapping gown. Once you've finished any necessary piecing, we can cut the center front opening. In the pattern, we recommend laying the garment out on a large surface and marking the center front, then cutting along the line. This is probably the safest way to make this cut, but if you're like me and you like to live dangerously, I'm going to show you another way to accomplish this where you don't even have to unfold your fabric after you've cut out your wrapping gown outline. If you folded your fabric as instructed, what you can do here is insert your scissors between the 2 layers of the fold so that you are only cutting the outer layer. You do want to be careful here. Slowly cut up the outer fold using your non-cutting hand to maintain tension as you cut. Before we unfold our fabric, we want to mark our neck opening lengths. And so grab your neck template for cutting. It's marked in cutting on red. Mine's tiny since I'm working in half size. Yours will be bigger. And we're going to match this where it says center front edge, match that to our center front edge that we've cut, and then the top should be along the fold. And now what we are going to do is mark based on which size we chose, and you can use a pencil or pin here to do that. Mark the 1 or the 2 for your size, and this is going to tell us how far to cut along the top fold to make the neck opening. So once we've marked it, we will take our scissors and cut from the top of the cut that we made up the center front at the top of each fold over to our mark. So we're just making those 2 slits on the top of the fold to open up the neckline. And if you are lining your wrapping gown, you are going to do the same thing for your lining. So at this point, we have our lining and outer fabrics cut. We have completed any piecing by stitching our extra bits onto our main part of the garment. And with that, we are all prepped for our next step of this project, which is the actual construction. And we aren't going to begin that until part 2 of this sew along. So put this somewhere safe until next time, and we will see you in just a short while for the second and final installment of our wrapping gown sew along. Friends, thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for updates when our next video premieres, and leave your comments below. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram where we post daily and we share your sew along makes. So if you'd like a chance to be featured, tag us at Burnley and Trowbridge or use the hashtag #ShowYourWrappingGown so we can see all of your excellent work. Until next time, happy sewing!